The Zornak battlecruiser stellar precursor hung like a crystalline dagger against the inky blackness of space, its quantum-reactive hull absorbing and refracting starlight with mathematical precision. Captain Selmak had spent 3 centuries preparing for first contact, meticulously studying xenopolitical protocols, analyzing thousands of potential scenarios, and calibrating diplomatic algorithms that could navigate the most complex interspecies interactions. Nothing in his extensive training could have prepared him for humanity. The initial long-range scans of Earth had been promising. A moderately advanced civilization, technological but fractured, showing signs of planetary-scale communication and rudimentary space exploration. The Zornak Galactic Confederation had classified humans as a Tier 3 emerging species, potentially interesting, but not yet worthy of serious diplomatic consideration. That assessment would change dramatically in the next few hours. Sub-analyst Krita, a xenocultural specialist with neural implants that could process 17 simultaneous linguistic streams, sat at her primary communication station. Her sensory tendrils, delicate biometallic appendages that could detect the most minute electromagnetic fluctuations, were twitching with anticipation. Initiating first contact protocol, she announced, her voice a precise melody of harmonic frequencies. Quantum communication arrays are synchronized. Universal translation matrices are calibrated to maximum sensitivity. The bridge of the stellar precursor was a marvel of alien engineering. Holographic displays shimmered like liquid mercury, displaying multiple dimensional analyses, spectral readings, and potential communication scenarios. Each Zornak crew member was a living computer, their biological systems enhanced by millennia of technological integration. What emerged from their communication attempt was nothing short of chaos. Instead of a measured diplomatic response, their arrays were suddenly flooded with a cacophony of sound and visual imagery that defied all rational interpretation. A thunderous musical composition blasted through their systems, a human audio transmission that would later be identified as "All I Want for Christmas Is You" by an artist named Mariah Carey. The visual feed was equally incomprehensible. Humans dressed in bizarre red and white uniforms, decorating indoor trees with sparkling objects. Children squealing with excitement. Adults engaging in what appeared to be ritualistic gift exchange. Massive feasts. Decorative lighting. Inflatable lawn ornaments depicting a rotund individual in a red suit. Krita's translation matrix began to overheat. "Captain," she said, her voice momentarily losing its usual mathematical precision, "I'm detecting what appears to be a massive, planet-wide cultural event. Initial analysis suggests a complex social ritual involving mythology, commerce, familial bonding, and potential psychological warfare." Zelnak's 3 eyes, each capable of perceiving different electromagnetic spectrums, narrowed in concentration. Psychological warfare. Explain. The humans seem to be simultaneously celebrating and stressing each other out, Krita reported. They're purchasing items they don't need, gathering in large familial groups that generate measurable emotional tension, and perpetuating an elaborate mythology about a gift-giving entity that violates multiple known physical laws. The Zornak had encountered hundreds of alien civilizations. They had peaceful first contacts with silicon-based life forms in the Andromeda cluster. They had negotiated complex trade agreements with methane-breathing hive minds. They had even established diplomatic relations with a species that communicated exclusively through intricate dance patterns. But humans? Humans were something else entirely. The transmission continued, defying all diplomatic protocols. Cheerful music, blinking lights, a mythical figure apparently traversing the entire planet in a single night, delivering packages to billions of children. Impossible flight paths, improbable payload capacities. Reindeer, whatever those were, seemingly capable of flight. "Is this," Zelnak asked with remarkable calm, "some form of global military communication?" Krita's response was a mix of professional analysis and genuine bewilderment. "Negative, Captain. This appears to be a celebration." Little did they know, They had just intercepted their first Christmas broadcast, and the Zornak's understanding of intelligent life was about to be completely rewritten. First contact had begun, and humanity was about to teach them a lesson in the most unexpected way possible. The Zornak High Command convened an emergency session immediately after receiving the initial Earth transmission. Captain Zelnak's preliminary report had set off every possible alarm in their vast, interconnected neural network. A global distribution network, Zelnak explained, his holographic presentation showing multiple images of Santa Claus, operated by a single individual who allegedly travels worldwide in a single solar rotation, delivering packages to billions of juvenile humans. The senior analyst stared in disbelief. Analyst Prime Vortok, a veteran of 1,000 first contact scenarios, leaned forward. Are you suggesting this is some form of sophisticated intelligence gathering mechanism? Zelnak's response was calculated. Precisely. Consider the logistics. This Santa Claus appears to have instantaneous global transportation capabilities, undetectable surveillance of children's behavioral patterns, a massive globally distributed manufacturing and logistics network, ability to bypass all known security and geographical constraints. The quantum computers aboard the stellar precursor began running impossibly complex calculations. They analyzed every aspect of the Santa Claus mythology, breaking down the physical impossibilities and potential hidden meanings. Sub-analyst Krita had been working nonstop, her neural implants processing terabytes of human cultural data. The mythology is even more complex than initial analysis suggested, she reported. This is not just a simple distribution network. It's a sophisticated social control mechanism. The concept of leaving milk and cookies for this mythical figure was particularly perplexing. Was it a form of biological bribery? A ritualistic offering to ensure favorable treatment? The Zornak had encountered hundreds of alien civilizations, but none had developed such an intricate system of mythological reward distribution. Look at the psychological complexity, Krita continued, projecting images of children writing letters to Santa, parents secretly purchasing gifts, elaborate decoration rituals. Humans are essentially creating a planet-wide performance of collective imagination. Children modify their behavior based on the promise of future rewards from a clearly impossible entity. Vortok's analytical mind was working overtime. It's a brilliant system of social conditioning. The mythology creates a self-enforcing behavioral modification protocol that spans generations. The more they analyzed, the more complex the Christmas ritual became. Humans decorated entire trees inside their living spaces. They wrapped objects in colorful paper, only to have other humans tear that paper apart moments later. They sang specific songs, wore particular color combinations, and engaged in elaborate gift-giving rituals. The resource expenditure is astronomical. One analyst noted, humans spend significant economic resources on purchasing items they will immediately give away to other humans, often without clear practical utility. Zelnak's final simulation showed something truly remarkable. The Christmas ritual was not just a cultural event. It was a massive planet-wide exercise in emotional engineering. Families reconnected. Communities came together. Economic systems were temporarily transformed, all centered around a mythology that was simultaneously absurd and profound. We are dealing with a species that can transform impossible mythology into a functional social technology, Zelnak concluded. This is not a weakness. This is an unprecedented form of collective social manipulation. The most disturbing revelation came from the psychological profiles. Children worldwide simultaneously believed in an omniscient being who could see their every action, who would reward or punish based on behavioral standards. It was a global system of soft power that would make the most sophisticated political control mechanisms look primitive. Recommendation, Zelnak stated firmly, is to classify humans as a Tier 1 species of social complexity. Forget technological advancement. Their ability to create and maintain collective mythological systems is our primary concern. As the Zornak High Command digested this information, one fundamental question remained. What other cultural rituals did these humans possess, and how would they reshape the understanding of intelligent life in the galaxy? The Christmas conspiracy was just the beginning. The Zornak observation team had barely recovered from their Christmas revelations when another human ritual erupted across their communication arrays. New Year's Eve, a phenomenon that defied every known principle of rational species behavior. Captain Selnak watched in scientific fascination as billions of humans simultaneously prepared for what appeared to be a planetary-wide synchronization event. The quantum analysis algorithms aboard the stellar precursor worked overtime, trying to comprehend the seemingly illogical ritual. They're counting down, sub-analyst Krita reported, her neural implants struggling to process the massive influx of data. An entire species, collectively marking the arbitrary transition of a solar cycle, with no apparent military, scientific, or survival-based purpose. The preliminary data was mind-boggling. Humans in massive gatherings, pressed together in impossible densities, their emotional states fluctuating in near-perfect synchronization. Times Square in New York showed hundreds of thousands of individuals packed into a relatively small geographical area, all focused on a descending illuminated sphere. It's a form of collective psychological reset, analyst Vortok hypothesized. They're literally willing a new temporal period into existence through sheer emotional convergence. The fireworks were particularly perplexing. Massive explosive devices launched into the sky, creating intricate light patterns that served no obvious defensive or communicative purpose. Each explosion was met with collective sounds of joy, wonder, and emotional release. Krita's linguistic algorithms detected something extraordinary. The humans were not just counting. They were making promises to themselves. Resolutions, they called them. Billions of individuals simultaneously committing to personal transformation, backed by nothing more than collective willpower and a culturally sanctioned moment of renewal. Look at the emotional complexity, she told Selnak. They're conducting a species-wide psychological recalibration. Each individual is essentially reprogramming their own behavioral parameters, synchronized across multiple time zones. The alcohol consumption was another bewildering factor. Humans deliberately altered their cognitive states, lowering inhibitions, increasing emotional expressiveness, all while maintaining a complex social contract of acceptable behavior. It was like watching a controlled form of temporary societal restructuring. Couples kissed at midnight, a ritual that seemed to combine elements of genetic selection, social bonding, and pure emotional expression. Families gathered. Strangers became temporary companions. The entire planet seemed to breathe as a single, complex organism. They're not just marking time, Selmak realized. They're collectively imagining a better future. This is more than a celebration. This is an act of mass, voluntary hope. The most shocking revelation came from the psychological profiles. Humans knew their resolutions were statistically unlikely to be maintained, yet they performed the ritual with complete sincerity, understanding both its potential futility and its profound emotional significance. Vortok's analysis was succinct. They are a species that derives strength from the act of hoping, not just from the hope itself. As the final moments of the old year ticked away, the Zornak observers witnessed something unprecedented. Billions of humans, across different cultures, languages, and geographical boundaries, were united in a single moment of collective anticipation. Fireworks exploded, champagne glasses clinked, strangers hugged. The planet seemed to vibrate with potential. Recommendation: Selnak stated to the High Command, classify humans as masters of emotional engineering. Their ability to transform an arbitrary temporal marker into a planet-wide ritual of hope and renewal is beyond our current comprehension. The new year had begun, and the Zornak had learned that humans were far more than just another emerging species. They were architects of hope. October arrived, and with it came a human ritual that completely shattered the Zornak's understanding of intelligent species behavior. Halloween, a celebration that seemed to defy every known principle of psychological self-preservation. They're voluntarily transforming themselves into representations of their most profound fears, sub-analyst Krita reported, her neural implants processing terabytes of visual and psychological data. And they're finding joy in this transformation. The analysis was unprecedented. Humans, both children and adults, were engaging in a complex ritual of psychological confrontation. They dressed as mythical creatures of terror, zombies, vampires, monsters from various cultural nightmares. But instead of showing genuine fear, they were laughing, celebrating, collecting sugary rewards. Captain Selnak watched the holographic displays with growing fascination. A young human walked past the cloaked Zornak observation pod, dressed in a grotesque zombie costume, waving cheerfully at seemingly nothing. The psychological profiles were off the charts. It's a form of collective fear inoculation, analyst Vortok hypothesized. They're neutralizing their existential terrors through performative transformation and communal celebration. The trick-or-treating ritual was particularly complex. Children, and some adults, would move from dwelling to dwelling, engaging in a ritualized exchange. They would present themselves in elaborate costumes, speak a specific linguistic phrase, trick or treat, and receive sugary provisions. It's not just a food acquisition protocol, Krita explained. It's a sophisticated social negotiation. The costume is a form of social currency. The more creative, the more likely they are to receive a positive response. Entire neighborhoods transformed. Dwellings were decorated with elaborate representations of death, decay, and supernatural phenomena. Humans seemed to be conducting a planet-wide psychological experiment in confronting and diffusing existential terror. The makeup and costume technology was particularly impressive. Humans could transform their biological appearance with such precision that they became nearly unrecognizable. Wounds that looked completely real, transformations that defied immediate visual comprehension. They're not just wearing costumes, Selnak noted. They're creating alternate identities, temporarily becoming something other than themselves, and finding joy in that transformation. Adult humans had developed an even more complex version of the ritual. Elaborate parties, intricate costume competitions, sexual selection rituals intertwined with psychological performance. It was as if the entire species was conducting a massive, synchronized psychological experiment. The most shocking element was the children. They showed no genuine fear of the terrifying representations around them. Skeleton costumes, zombie makeup, vampiric transformations. Each was met with laughter, excitement, a complete rejection of terror. Vortok's psychological analysis was groundbreaking. They are a species that does not just survive fear. They reimagine it. They transform it. They find humor and connection in what should be terrifying. The sugar economy was another marvel. Massive resources were expended on creating and distributing sugary provisions specifically for this ritual. Children would return home with bags full of treats, their costumes telltale signs of their social creativity and psychological resilience. Recommendation: Selnak stated to the High Command, classify humans as masters of psychological transformation. Their ability to turn existential terror into a communal celebration of creativity is beyond our current comprehension. As the night progressed, the Zornak observers continued to watch in amazement. Humans had taken the concept of fear and completely dismantled it, turning it into a celebration of imagination, community, and collective joy. The Halloween ritual was more than a holiday. It was a testament to human psychological complexity, a species that could look terror in the face and laugh. The Zornak High Council received encrypted transmissions that would challenge everything they knew about species development. St. Patrick's Day, a cultural phenomenon that defied all known principles of ethnic and cultural boundaries. They're conducting a planet-wide cultural infiltration, sub-analyst Krita reported, her neural implants working overtime to process the massive influx of data. An entire global population is voluntarily adopting the cultural markers of a relatively small island's historical population. Captain Selmak leaned forward, his three eyes focusing intently on the holographic displays. Humans everywhere were dressed in green, a color with no inherent strategic or biological significance. They consumed specific beverages. They engaged in elaborate ritualistic behaviors that had no apparent survival value. The most shocking revelation was the participation. Individuals with zero genetic connection to Irish heritage were participating with equal enthusiasm. A human of Asian descent wearing a "Kiss Me, I'm Irish" button. Another with clearly African genetic markers performing traditional Irish dance. A group of individuals who appeared to have no familial connection to Ireland, singing Irish folk songs. It's a form of voluntary cultural assimilation unlike anything in Galactic records, analyst Vortok observed. They're not just celebrating a culture. They're temporarily becoming that culture. The alcohol consumption was another marvel of social engineering. Humans would deliberately alter their cognitive states, creating a controlled form of temporary social restructuring. Entire cities transformed. Productivity seemingly halted. Yet the ritual maintained a complex social contract of acceptable behavior. Look at the psychological complexity, Krita continued. They understand the cultural origins. They recognize the historical significance. But they've transformed it into a global celebration of inclusivity. The Zornak computers ran impossibly complex simulations. How could a species develop a cultural ritual that transcended genetic boundaries, allowed temporary identity transformation, created massive economic activity, maintained social cohesion, celebrated cultural heritage without genetic prerequisite? It was a form of cultural technology that made their most advanced diplomatic protocols look primitive. Vortok's analysis was succinct. They are conducting a planet-wide experiment in cultural fluidity. The ability to temporarily adopt and celebrate a cultural identity not their own is unprecedented. Parades erupted in cities worldwide. Humans painted themselves green. They consumed specific beverages. They sang songs in languages many didn't understand. Yet there was no conflict, no cultural tension, just pure, unbridled celebration. Recommendation. Selnak stated to the High Command, classify humans as masters of cultural engineering. Their ability to transform a localized cultural marker into a global celebration of inclusivity is beyond our current comprehension. The most profound moment came when the Zornak observers realized the true nature of the ritual. It wasn't about Irish culture. It wasn't about historical accuracy. It was about connection, about finding joy in cultural exploration, about breaking down the very concept of cultural boundaries. A species that could turn a historical cultural marker into a global celebration of unity was not just another emerging civilization. They were something else entirely. The St. Patrick's Day ritual was more than a holiday. It was a masterclass in human social technology, a celebration of the very concept of cultural fluidity. Thanksgiving proved to be the most dangerous human ritual the Zornak had encountered. What appeared to be a simple communal meal was actually a complex psychological warfare protocol that defied all known principles of social interaction. It's not about food, sub-analyst Krita reported, her neural implants processing terabytes of familial interaction data. It's a controlled form of multi-generational psychological negotiation. Captain Selmak watched the holographic displays with growing fascination. Multiple human generations gathered around a single food preparation area. The emotional complexity was staggering. Decades of unresolved tensions, carefully maintained social contracts, explosive potential for conflict, and an equally powerful drive for connection. The turkey, a specific avian species prepared with ritualistic precision, was more than a food item. It was a centerpiece of psychological warfare. Family members positioned themselves with mathematical precision. Conversations were intricate dance of verbal navigation, each participant attempting to maintain familial bonds, avoid triggering historical conflicts, negotiate personal and collective narratives. consume massive quantities of prepared sustenance. They're conducting diplomatic negotiations, analyst Vortok observed, using food as their primary communication protocol. The preparation ritual was equally complex. Humans would spend entire solar cycles preparing for a single meal. Economic resources were allocated. Travel was undertaken. Massive logistical operations were launched, all for a few hours of communal interaction. Look at the psychological complexity, Krita explained. They're not just sharing a meal. They're renegotiating their entire familial ecosystem. Political discussions would emerge and be skillfully deflected. Personal life choices would be subtly interrogated. Generational differences would be both celebrated and challenged, all while maintaining a veneer of communal harmony. The most shocking element was the deliberate creation of potentially volatile social situations. Humans would knowingly place individuals with conflicting worldviews in close proximity, creating a controlled form of social tension management. Vortok's analysis was groundbreaking. They are a species that finds connection through carefully managed conflict. The meal is not the goal. The negotiation is the goal. Children would be simultaneously indulged and subtly evaluated. Career choices discussed. Romantic partners introduced and assessed. Marriage prospects negotiated, all under the guise of a communal meal. Recommendation. Zelnak stated to the High Command, classify humans as masters of multi-generational social engineering. Their ability to transform a potential conflict zone into a ritual of connection is beyond our current comprehension. The most profound moment came when the Zornak observers realized the true nature of the ritual. It wasn't about food. It wasn't about historical commemoration. It was about maintaining the delicate fabric of familial and social connections. Humans had transformed a potentially explosive social scenario into a ritual of connection, hope, and collective resilience. Thanksgiving was more than a holiday. It was a masterclass in human social technology, a celebration of the very concept of familial and generational connection. The formal first contact meeting was supposed to follow standard galactic diplomatic protocols. Instead, a human representative invited the Zornak delegation to a potluck, a term that initially translated to nothing in their linguistic database. Captain Selnak hesitated. Every diplomatic instinct screamed caution. Every scientific impulse demanded investigation. It's a ritual of culinary and cultural exchange, sub-analyst Krita explained, her neural implants working overtime to decode the complex social mechanism. Each participant brings a dish representing their personal or cultural background. The venue was a community center in what humans called suburban Chicago. Simple, unassuming, completely at odds with the massive starship hovering invisibly above the building. When the Zornak delegation arrived, carefully disguised to blend with human appearance protocols, they carried dishes that represented the most intricate aspects of their culinary and cultural heritage. Quantum-infused nutrient crystals, harmonic frequency-balanced protein compounds, dishes that represented millennia of scientific and cultural evolution. The humans brought something far more complex: emotion. Vortok, the lead diplomatic analyst, watched in fascination as humans exchanged food with an intimacy that defied all known interspecies communication protocols. Each dish came with a story, a personal narrative, a piece of individual and collective identity. An elderly human woman approached Excelnak, offering a dish that steamed with complex aromatics. "My grandmother's recipe," she said, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of pride and vulnerability. "It's been in our family for generations." The Zornak had encountered hundreds of alien civilizations. They had negotiated with silicon-based life forms. They had established trade agreements with methane-breathing hive minds. But this was something entirely different. They're not just sharing food, Krita reported, her analysis reaching new levels of complexity. They're sharing themselves. Each dish is a form of personal and cultural communication more sophisticated than our most advanced diplomatic algorithms. A young human brought a spicy chicken wing to Excelnak. The captain, following carefully studied human interaction protocols, took a bite. The explosion of flavor was secondary to the emotional connection that accompanied the gesture. The potluck was a masterclass in soft diplomacy. Humans from different backgrounds, different cultures, different economic statuses, all connected through the simple act of sharing food and stories. Look at the psychological complexity, Vortok observed. They're conducting a form of intimate cultural exchange that makes our most sophisticated diplomatic protocols look like primitive communication attempts. Personal histories emerged. Cultural nuances were shared. Emotional barriers were dismantled, all through the act of sharing a meal. The Zornak delegation realized something profound. Humans had transformed food from a mere survival mechanism into a sophisticated tool of emotional and cultural communication. Recommendation: Zelmak stated later to the High Command, classify humans as masters of interpersonal communication. Their ability to transform a simple meal into a complex diplomatic and emotional exchange is beyond our current comprehension. The potluck was more than a meal. It was a glimpse into the true nature of human connection, a celebration of individual identity and collective humanity. The final report to the Galactic Confederation would redefine humanity's place in the universal hierarchy. Captain Selmak stood before the High Council, his presentation a culmination of months of intensive study of human cultural rituals. Humans are not an emerging species to be categorized or controlled, he began, holographic displays flickering with images of Christmas, Halloween, New Year's, Thanksgiving, and countless other celebrations. They are masters of social technology, capable of transforming potential sources of conflict into opportunities for connection. Sub-analyst Krita's comprehensive analysis was projected behind him. Each holiday was a sophisticated algorithm of emotional engineering, community building, and species-wide communication. The council members, representatives from thousands of advanced civilizations, listened in stunned silence. Their holidays are not mere cultural markers, Zelnak continued. They are complex social technologies that manage psychological stress, rebuild community bonds, create collective hope, transform fear into celebration, negotiate complex social dynamics, maintain intergenerational connections. Vortok's psychological profile of human celebrations was particularly groundbreaking. Humans had developed a unique ability to temporarily adopt different identities, neutralize existential fears, create inclusive cultural experiences, transform potential conflicts into moments of connection, generate hope through collective imagination. The evidence was overwhelming. Halloween showed their ability to confront terror through creativity. Christmas demonstrated their capacity for collective mythology. New Year's revealed their power to synchronize hope across an entire planet. Thanksgiving exposed their intricate family negotiation skills. St. Patrick's Day proved their talent for cultural inclusivity. We are recommending, Zelnak stated firmly, an immediate and comprehensive reassessment of humanity's galactic classification. The traditional tiered system of species development, which had stood for millennia, suddenly seemed woefully inadequate. Humans were not just another emerging civilization. They were social engineers of unprecedented complexity. Their holidays were not just celebrations. They were sophisticated tools of species-wide communication, psychological management, and collective evolution. The Galactic Confederation would never be the same. Humanity had been discovered, not through technological might, not through military power, but through their extraordinary ability to find connection, hope, and joy in the most unexpected ways. The universe had just been reminded that sometimes the most powerful technology is not found in spacecraft or weapons, but in the human capacity to imagine, to connect, and to celebrate. Epilogue. The galaxy would learn to party.